Welcome to Toon Touch. I hope to ease your mind tonight. But before we dive in, please let me know where you are listening from. The storm had rolled in hours ago, heavier than any you could remember. Rain hammered the roof in a relentless rhythm, thrumming like a distant drumbeat, shaking the old house to its bones. Shadows of branches scraped against the walls, swaying violently in the wind. You sat on the edge of your bed, the glow of your phone casting a dim halo across the room. The power had gone out hours earlier, leaving the house wrapped in a tense, heavy darkness that pressed against your skin. You tried to convince yourself it was just a storm, just wind, rain, and imagination. But the sound of the house groaning in response to the tempest felt alive, threatening. Your hands shook as you pulled the blankets around your shoulders, trying to block the oppressive chill that seeped through the wooden floorboards. And then came the first sound that made your blood run cold. 3 deliberate knocks at the front door. You froze, heart hammering in your chest. Who would be out in this storm? Who would knock now? You glanced at your phone. 12:47 a.m. The street would be deserted, the neighbors asleep. No one should be out here. The knocks repeated, slow, deliberate, not random, not the wind. Hello? Your voice quavered, swallowed by the roar of the storm. No answer. You told yourself it was a tree branch, a shutter rattling. Rational thoughts clung to your mind like driftwood in the dark waters of fear. But even as you said it aloud, you could feel a presence, something just beyond the glass, waiting, patient. Then the second sound came. From the window, your bedroom window. On the second floor, your breath caught. Your fingers curled around the edge of the blanket, knuckles white. The curtain shifted slightly. For a heartbeat, you thought you saw a dark shape pressed against it. The sound was slow, measured, inhumanly precise. And then you heard it faint, almost drowned in the storm. Let me in. A whisper, delicate yet insistent. You didn't move. Couldn't. The blankets clung to you like a protective cocoon, but you knew in your bones that whatever it was, it had already been watching, waiting. Your body refused to move at first, paralyzed by a fear older than reason itself. The whispering voice pressed against your mind as tangibly as the storm pressing against the walls. You told yourself it was a trick of the wind, a figment of your imagination, but your gut screamed that something had been at the window, watching, waiting. Eventually, you slid out of bed, feet cold against the hardwood floor. The flashlight on your phone seemed feeble against the darkness, casting only a narrow beam across the room. Every shadow twisted unnaturally, as if aware of your presence, pulling itself toward you, stretching, waiting. The window loomed across from you. The curtain swayed slightly. You thought you glimpsed a shadow, another heartbeat, another breath, and it vanished. Your pulse raced. You gripped the flashlight tighter. Who's there? You asked, voice breaking. It sounded foreign even to your own ears, swallowed by the storm. No reply. Then, the glass vibrated softly under your fingertips as if it were alive. A faint dragging sound, long and deliberate, scraped across the pane. Your instinct screamed at you to flee, but you couldn't look away. Something pressed against the glass, pale, slender, almost too long to be human. You stumbled back, gasping, almost knocking over the lamp on the nightstand. The whispers returned, now overlapping. Let us in. We've been waiting. Open the door. Your chest tightened. You considered calling anyone, but the storm had knocked out the signal. No calls, no messages, nothing. Only the sound of rain, the whispering, and the feeling that something, was inside the room, even though you could see no one. The night stretched endlessly, The tapping moved to other windows, a steady rhythm, unhurried, patient. You tried to barricade the door, push the desk in front of the bedroom window, but the shadow at the glass seemed to anticipate you. It pressed its hand against the pane, leaving a faintly wet print. You froze. That print was inside the glass, as if the being had entered without passing through the window at all. Panic surged. Your own reflection stared back at you, pale and distorted, its mouth smiling wider than yours, its eyes blinking independently. And then you realized the figure was not outside. It had always been inside. Time no longer existed. Minutes stretched like hours, hours like days. The storm outside never ceased, pounding the house relentlessly. The whispers pressed into your mind from every corner, every wall, even the floor beneath you. We are inside you, always. You cannot escape. The house was no longer recognizable. Hallways twisted impossibly. Doors led to rooms you had never seen. Ceilings stretched high above your head or pressed low against your shoulders. The windows reflected faces that weren't yours, grinning, watching, blinking independently. You no longer knew where reality ended and nightmare began. Figures moved fluidly through the walls, pressing against ceilings, gliding across floors. Some floated, some slid along walls, some stood silently in corners, impossibly tall and thin, eyes black voids, mouths stretched unnaturally wide. Each figure watched, waited, whispered your name. You tried to barricade doors, shove furniture against windows, but the house refused. It was alive, breathing, shifting. Every action you took was anticipated. Every escape route collapsed before you could reach it. A whisper came from your own reflection. You can't hide. You are ours. You realized it wasn't just the house that had changed. You had changed. Your reflection in every window, every mirror smiled when you did not. Your hands twitched as if moved by someone else. Your thoughts carried voices that were not yours. You ran blindly through the distorted hallways. The storm roared outside in sync with the chaos inside. Handprints pressed against every surface, crawling, dripping, leaving trails of icy cold that burned your skin. Figures glided closer, pressing through walls, merging shadows, whispering, "Open, let us in. We are inside." Your mind began to fracture. You screamed, but no sound emerged. Every whisper echoed your own thoughts. You tried to recall the outside world, a life before the storm, but those memories were distant, blurred, unreal. The house, the storm, the figures, they were all there, and nothing else existed. And in the corner of your vision, a figure loomed taller than the ceiling, grinning, waiting. Its fingers reached toward you. You realized in that instant the truth. You could not leave. You could not escape. The figures were inside you, in the house, in the storm, in every part of your existence. We've always been here, inside your walls, inside your mind, and now inside you. The night had no end, hours, or was it days, merged into one endless storm of rain, wind, and shadow. The figures pressed closer, crawling along walls, squeezing through cracks in the floorboards, emerging silently from every corner. Their black eyes followed your every movement, their grins impossibly wide, mocking, teasing, patient. The whispers were deafening now, overlapping, forming sentences in dozens of voices. We are inside you. We are always inside. You cannot leave. You belong to us. You stumbled through the warped hallways, tripping over furniture that had moved by itself. Every door led back to the same room. Every window reflected countless faces, all grinning, all staring, all echoing your own distorted voice. Open, let us in. We are inside you. A hand brushed your arm. Ice cold, impossibly long fingers curling around your wrist. You tried to shake it off, but the touch remained. heavy, inescapable. The storm outside roared in tandem with the chaos inside. You realized with sickening clarity, the house wasn't just alive. It was them. The walls, the floors, the ceilings, all were extensions of their presence. You screamed, but no sound came. You ran, but the hallways twisted, bent, elongated. Stairs became walls. Doors became ceilings. Nothing obeyed the laws of reality anymore. And through it all, the whispers persisted, louder than the storm. We've always been here, inside your walls, inside your mind, inside you. You sank to the floor, eyes wide, realizing you could no longer tell where you ended and the figures began. The storm had subsided, though it felt more like the world itself had paused. The house was silent, or so it seemed. Shadows no longer moved, whispers had quieted, yet the house was not empty. And you were not alone. Every surface bore evidence of the horrors. Hundreds of wet, pale handprints crawling across walls, ceilings, and floors. Furniture had moved. Doors led to rooms that shouldn't exist. And yet, in the quiet, you felt them. Not just in corners, not just in reflections or shadows, but inside yourself. We are inside, the whisper hummed faintly. Eternal now. We are always inside. You tried to stand. The house pulsed around you. Hallways stretched, ceilings shifted. Windows reflected fragments of the storm. Pale handprints, grinning shadows. The house had changed, and so had you. Every instinct screamed to fight, to escape, to survive. But you understood fully. The storm, the figures, the whispers, they would follow you wherever you went. Your house was no longer a refuge. Your mind was no longer your own. And as the first light of dawn filtered through the warped windows, you realized the final, terrifying truth. There was no end. There never would be. You were theirs. The house was theirs. And they were eternal. Forever. The hollow beneath. In the fog-choked outskirts of Elmwood, a town nestled along a sluggish river, where whispers of the past clung like damp moss. The house on Sycamore Lane stood as a relic of dread. Erected in 1878 by Ezekiel Hawthorne, a mill owner whose sudden disappearance fueled local legend, the Victorian Manor was a grotesque shadow of its former glory. Its gabled roof sagged under decades of neglect, clapboards sloughed off like dead skin, and tall, narrow windows gazed blankly, reflecting nothing but the creeping twilight. Clara stumbled upon it during her desperate flight from a life in tatters, a marriage dissolved in bitter accusations, debts from a failed boutique that drained her savings, and a secret guilt that gnawed at her soul, unspoken even in her darkest moments. The listing, found on an obscure real estate site, was priced so low it seemed a clerical error. But in Elmwood, where superstition was as common as the morning mist, such deals were met with sidelong glances. The realtor, Mrs. Hargrove, a widow with trembling hands and eyes that flitted nervously, met Clara at the property's edge, her voice barely above a whisper as she recounted the barest history. A fire in 1973 that consumed the Wilkins family, parents, 2 children. Tragic, but long past, she said, hurrying through the paperwork. Clara, hollowed by exhaustion and resolve, signed without a second thought, craving a place to vanish. She arrived as dusk bled into night, the sky bruised with purples and grays. The front door, heavy oak scarred with age, groaned as it opened, releasing a stale breath laced with dust, mildew, and a faint metallic tang that prickled her senses. Her possessions were meager: a worn duffel stuffed with clothes and a few keepsakes, a folding cot, a box of canned goods, and a leather-bound journal where she scrawled her fractured thoughts to stave off despair. The living room, with its high ceilings and ornate but crumbling crown molding, became her refuge. A cracked bay window admitted slivers of moonlight, casting eerie patterns across the faded floral wallpaper, which peeled to reveal black mold blooming like ink blots. The fireplace, choked with ash, stood cold and uninviting. As night deepened, the house seemed to awaken. Floorboards creaked as if paced by unseen feet. The wind moaned through unseen cracks, and a distant drip echoed rhythmically, like a pulse in the dark. Clara lay on her cot, staring at the ceiling's web of cracks, her mind replaying her failures, the final fight with her ex, the foreclosure notice, the friend she'd betrayed in a moment of weakness. Sleep came reluctantly, plagued by dreams of suffocating shadows and eyeless faces. At precisely midnight, a grandfather clock in the hallway, unwound and silent when she arrived, chimed a single discordant note. Then it began, a low, rhythmic thumping, like the heartbeat of some subterranean beast vibrating through the foundation. It pulsed in her chest, syncing with her own accelerating heart. Clara sat up, sweat beading despite the chill, her breath shallow. The sound emanated from the basement, a place Mrs. Hargrove had warned was flooded, stairs rotted, best left alone. Compelled by a mix of dread and an inexplicable urge, Clara grabbed her heavy flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom as she navigated to the kitchen. The basement door loomed, its oak surface warped, paint blistered as if scorched, the latch rusted and cold as ice. Turning it felt like defying fate. The door swung inward with a wail, exhaling a dank gust redolent of wet earth, decay, and something organic, like rotting flesh. The stairs descended into a void, each tread sagging and splintered, slick with moisture. Clara's flashlight wavered, illuminating cobwebs draped like funeral veils and concrete walls glistening with slime. The thumping intensified, a summons echoing in her bones. She tested each step, the wood groaning under her weight, splinters pricking her bare feet. The air grew denser, colder, pressing against her lungs like a living weight. Halfway down, the thumping ceased, replaced by a whisper her name, drawn out in a voice that slithered from the darkness, guttural and inhuman, like stones grinding in a cavern. Clara. Terror seized her, but a magnetic pull urged her deeper. The basement floor was cracked concrete, pooling with brackish water that mirrored her distorted reflection. Her light revealed relics of forgotten lives, a rusted bicycle frame entwined with impossible underground vines, shattered porcelain dolls with eyes that tracked her, stacks of newspapers yellowed with age, their headlines screaming of Elmwood's tragedies, mill collapses, missing persons, unsolved horrors. At the center, a grotesque altar, a spiral of blackened human bones, meticulously arranged skulls, ribs, femurs radiating outward in a ritualistic pattern. In the vortex lay a tarnished silver locket, its surface etched with swirling arcane symbols that seemed to writhe under her gaze. The air thickened, a suffocating pressure that made her gasp. Kneeling, ignoring the cold seep through her jeans, Clara lifted the locket. It was arctic, frost blooming on her fingers. Prying it open, she found a sepia photograph. A family of 4, dressed in 1970s attire, their faces smeared as if by time, but their eyes grotesquely large, abyssal voids that devoured light and stared with accusatory hunger. The locket snapped shut with a sound like a breaking bone, and the thumping erupted anew, violent and rapid, shaking the earth. From the shadows, a figure coalesced, towering, emaciated, its limbs unnaturally long and jointed wrong, its head a featureless void, yet radiating predatory intent. Clara felt its gaze pierce her soul, unearthing her deepest shames. She fled, stairs splintering in her wake, shards embedding in her soles. Bursting into the kitchen, she slammed the door and wedged a chair under the knob, her body trembling. But the thumping pursued, infiltrating the house, rattling dishes, shaking walls, dislodging dust from rafters. Lights surged, then died, plunging her into darkness. Her phone, grasped in panic, flickered and cracked, its battery draining instantly. The whispering multiplied, a chorus from every crevice. Walls, vents, the chimney. "Clara, join us! The hollow hungers!" She pounded the front door, knuckles bleeding, but it held fast, the knob searing her palm with cold. Windows mocked her, glass impervious to her desperate blows with a fireplace poker. The floor buckled, seams splitting to ooze viscous blood, warm and pulsating, flooding the room with a coppery stench. The house lived walls breathing, ceilings sagging, the structure throbbing like a heart. The voices wove a narrative of horror. The Wilkins family hadn't died in a fire, but were ensnared by an entity older than the house, birthed when Ezekiel Hawthorne desecrated a Native American burial mound to build his empire. The entity, a corrupted guardian spirit or something darker, fed on souls, binding them through the locket, a talisman forged in blood and betrayal. Visions assaulted Clara. Tommy Wilkins, a boy, hiding as shadows consumed him. His sister, Lily, dragged screaming into the earth, their parents clawing at unyielding walls until their fingers bled. Earlier, victims flashed Ezekiel himself, a 1920s drifter, a 1950s runaway, each lured and devoured, their essences trapped eternally. The floor rent wider, a jagged maw from which pale, clawed hands emerged, fingers elongated and grasping. They seized her ankles, their touch a numbing cold that crept upward. The locket burned in her fist, and within, her face materialized among the family, eyes hollowing into voids. Dawn restored silence. The fissure sealed, blood evaporated, the house inert. Clara was gone, her cot empty, the locket open on the floor, her visage among the damned. Months later, a new for sale sign sprouted, price slashed further. Emily and Jack, a couple fleeing urban burnout, saw potential in the fixer-upper. Elmwood's warnings haunted, cursed were dismissed as quaint folklore. They moved in, unpacking amid laughter, planning renovations. The first night, the thumping began. Emily, curious, found the basement door unbolted. The bone spiral awaited, the locket now holding 5 faces, including Clara's. The entity, roused and ravenous, whispered their insecurities, failed dreams, unspoken resentments. Jack followed Emily's screams, but the door sealed, trapping them. By morning, the locket bore 7 faces. Rumors swelled, shadows in windows, unnatural chills. Professor Elias Thorne, a historian, bought the house to unravel its secrets. He unearthed diaries in the attic, detailing Ezekiel's desecration of a sacred mound, awakening the Hollow's guardian. The locket, a shaman's relic corrupted by greed, bound victims to the entity. Thorne descended to confront it, but visions of all prior souls overwhelmed him. Clara, the Wilkinses, countless others. He vanished, his face joining the locket's gallery. Decades passed. The house defied demolition, machinery failing, workers fleeing, new buyers, drifters, dreamers. The desperate fed the hollow. The locket's photograph grew crowded, a mosaic of torment. Sycamore Lane became a shunned path, yet the house stood, thumping softly, whispering invitations to the lost, its hunger unending.